So, welcome to Clean Nuts, the podcast, which is devoted to all things automotive. Today's podcast is not talking about specific cars, but more importantly, their owners. What has been their journey? What has been the catalyst that ignited a lifelong passion for cars? To help us discover this, let me introduce you to a good friend of mine, a man with an encyclopedic knowledge of cars, Adrian. Welcome, Adrian.
Thank you, Nick.
So let's start by going way back in time.
Mm-hmm.
What is your earliest memory of a car? Not the family hack. Is there a moment when you thought, oh, hold on a second, I'm interested and captivated by these machines? Do you remember that moment?
That's an interesting question because I don't think I do, which either means it was always there.
Yeah, always there.
I was always there. Because I don't remember a trigger point, genuinely. I don't remember, and therefore I can only conclude it was already in there.
It's a DNA job.
It could be a DNA job. I can't think of nothing else. In fact, we'll talk about that maybe later with about my father and my son. But I suspect there might be some DNA going on. I don't know if there's any scientific evidence that such a thing exists with regard to cars, but...
Well, let's do it a different way. Paint me a picture, if you will. You're growing up, you've got this inbuilt attraction to cars and understanding of them. What were the cars you saw around you?
I was born in Northern Ireland, in Bangor, of which I have no memory because I left at 1. But I can remember we moved to the New Forest, and I can remember sitting in my father's Humber Sceptre in the drive and so I would have been 2 or 3.
So that's bench seat, is it?
No, not bench seat. It was a sports saloon, Humber Sceptre, and I remember being fascinated by all the gauges because it had rev counter and
oil pressure
gauges. Yeah, and I remember that quite clearly, and I can remember washing it, which is another thing I've carried on doing.
Yeah.
I can remember, which was probably quite unusual for 2 or 3 year olds. I don't know, but I do remember that. So I think that's perhaps my earliest memory, and I suppose it never went away.
We had a Hillman Minx, which is a sister of that kind.
Mm-hmm. It is, yeah.
Alabaster and green.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That wasn't my father's first car, but that's my first memory of his car, and I suspect that fathers and sons and cars, that is often the first.
Did you ever drive that car?
No, I was too. We then moved from Ringwood in the New Forest to Edinburgh, and he at the time he covered a lot of miles. He travelled around Scotland and covered a very high mileage and wore his cars out quite quickly.
That must have been at a time when not many men were doing a lot of miles.
Yeah, I mean it was the job was to visit agricultural agents located all around the whole of Scotland, and it entailed, I mean, even 30,000 miles a year today would be a high mileage, but at the time that was a high mileage, and so consequently his cars were changed quite frequently because they were worn out.
And did you drive any cars before the legal age?
I do remember. I do remember being taken to an airfield, and my mother had it's a very rare car, Honda Z Coupe, and it was a little 650cc, I think, Japanese micro car, and I was taken to an airfield and I was allowed to drive that. I think I did drive a car before that, but again, that's not a especially clear memory, funnily enough, but I do remember that. Not jumping ahead very far, but I remember a holiday in Scotland, and my father, to keep me quiet, whilst he practiced his golf on a field, allowed me to drive his car around the field when I was 9.
Nice.
All evening. And that's what I wanted to do.
Okay, well that takes us forward a little bit. What happened with your driving test?
Huh.
Were you a natural or did you struggle or what happened?
No, I think I was a natural. I'm sorry. I won't be modest here. I think I was a natural. I had been driving sort of instances like I just described around this field, but my dad would take me to airfields.
So you knew the biting point?
Yeah.
It wasn't a kangaroo issue?
No, I was possibly overconfident. Sorry, to answer your question about the driving test, I remember I had not many lessons, because my mum used to take me out as well. And she had a Citroën Diane, which was quite an unusual driving experience for a learner.
Is that
it
comes out of dashboard?
Push-pull dashboard gear. Anyway, and the chap I was learning with had a Escort Popular, which was a sort of detuned, very basic.
Just like a 1.3.
Mark
1 or Mark 2?
It was Mark 2. Mark 2. 1.1.
1.1, yeah.
And even then I remember thinking this is slow. And that was transferring from a Citroën Diane. Anyway, when I
Citroën Diane felt sprightly.
But on the day of the test, he, for some reason, I don't know why, had changed to something that seemed impossibly exotic. It was an Austin 1300 GT. And
so that's an 1100 with a 1300. Great.
And this thing felt like a Ferrari after the Escort.
Really?
It felt genuinely rapid. And anyway, that was the car I took my test in. And
hydroelastic suspension.
It was a supercar, super little car. And I passed, and my mum said, "Oh, that's wonderful. You can go out on your own in my Citroën." And I did, and I remember yelling with delight because, of course, there's also the novelty of being alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is huge, but this yelling and laughing to the extent that, Citroën Dianes had quite soft suspension and high roll angles. I very nearly wrote this car off on my first ever solo drive through overconfidence. Yeah. And I bet I'm not the first person that's experienced that.
No. And you won't be the last.
I won't be the last, indeed.
So you passed your test first time?
Passed my test, and
you had access to the Diane.
Access to the Diane, yeah. Great car though it wasn't really what I saw myself in, and I'd already actually developed quite a keen interest in classic cars and what had become the classic car movement, which didn't really get going until the 70s.
Yeah.
I was an early adopter of Thoroughbred and Classic Cars magazine, and so I already had an interest in classic cars, and I think we set out, as probably most people did at the time, looking for a Mini. And I won't stand up to prove it, but I'm not really the right size for a Mini.
Was that the days when Minis were winning rallies?
Yeah. They were a bit later on. This is the 70s, but they were the archetypal starter car, a Mini. And I remember all I wanted was a Mini with nudge bars. Remember those chrome?
Yeah, on the top of the bumpers.
And big wheels. That to me was... But anyway, I wasn't really... and they seemed very expensive. And anyway, I remember seeing in the local paper, as all cars were bought then, a Triumph Herald convertible. And it was
1360.
1360, spot on. ALP 346H. Unfortunately, I don't have a photograph of it. I don't know what I've done with that.
Have you checked it on the government website?
It's still with us. It's still with us,
Still
amazingly. Still with us. Still registered and MOT'd and motoring. And it was, we lived in Harpenden at that time, and it was in St Albans. And it was £425. which I don't know whether that's a couple of £1,000 in today's money.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah, something like that, £2,000 or £3,000. And
so you were working and you saved up and bought your first
yeah,
car?
yeah.
Herald convertible.
Herald convertible, which I thought was wonderful, but in retrospect, my particular example was probably pretty terrible. Mechanically, I mean, I think it sort of looked all right, and I remember I had to immediately personalise it with a tiny little leather.
Mountain steering wheel.
I had to personalise it with this ridiculous little steering wheel, and it had a scratch on the boot, so I did the sensible thing, I covered that with a boot rack.
Nice.
A boot rack, so trying to sort of evoke the Grand Tourer look, you know, but anyway, it was a great little first car, and you know, it was, I think, like...
What sort of driving did you do in it? Were you going on long journeys? Were you an adventurer?
Yeah, no, I was, right, yeah, I mean, I think I went off on holiday with a friend in it, and it was the freedom, it was just drove everywhere.
It's a ticket to ride, isn't it?
Ticket to ride, and I think I was out every night going somewhere, you know, you were just, and I hate the expression now, but I was tearing about in this car.
Even with the rear wheels?
Well, interesting you should say that, because I only experienced it once, and that was enough to make me realise that I could come to harm, particularly as I think the back tyres were probably bolts anyway. So anyway, that was that, and
so you did this gripping this miniature steering wheel?
Gripping my little miniature steering wheel, and
was that the extent of the customisation?
I
Did you
think
get
it was.
trim rings and
I think I was quite restrained. I don't think I didn't do anything else, because I think even then I had this. I'm trying to think how old it was. It was probably 9 years old or so. I still had this sort of notion of trying to keep it looking classic rather than just a kind of banger, if you like. You know, but it was quite a nice example, and and I already had this notion that I wanted it to sort of look correct rather than boy racer.
there's still a big movement, isn't there, with that? Whether if you paint the car the wrong colour, people immediately say, it's not. They were never painted that colour.
No, that's right. Well, I'm not that. I'm terrible at that. Particularly in a certain period, you know. Sort of, but no, I hate.
I saw a magenta stag at the weekend, which is it's almost coming back in fashion.
It has, yeah. I thought that's a colour that I only really associate with Triumph. I mean, other people must have used it, but I don't remember other manufacturers.
Maybe it was painted the wrong colour.
No, magenta was a Triumph, absolutely a Triumph colour. But certainly for the Mark II stags. But
so were you servicing your car yourself, or did you use a local garage?
I was too busy charging them back at night. I mean, servicing then was, will it pass an MOT? You know, and I think, I mean, that was at a time when, I think with my dad, we used to change the oil on the driveway and put the oil down the drain.
Oh my God.
but you know, that's...
Not environmentally...
No, well, you know, I'm not proud of that, but at the time, I don't think either of us would have a notion there was anything wrong with it. But anyway, we did.
I think I did it. So, how long did you keep that car?
But I suppose this is interesting relating it to the journey. I very quickly wanted to progress.
Right.
Very, you know, okay, sweet little car, but hey, I don't want a sweet little car.
So was it 3 months, 5 months?
I think it was 6 or 7 months. I then saw in my... I decided I would like... I mean, this was the progression at that time, an MGB. I decided I'd like an MGB, and saw a advert again in the local paper. Went over there, and I remember waiting for some traffic lights, and this orange, I can't remember the correct name of the colour, anyway, MGB came around the corner, and I said, wow. And that was the car. He was going back to the house.
Right.
So I sort of saw it and just thought, oh, I have to have that. I I have a photograph actually.
I'm still trying to remember what the name of the colour is.
Yeah, it's well. Hey, I mean, there's a photograph of it here. That colour. It was.
Yeah, it's one with the inset grill.
Yeah, it was. That's right. It was. I don't know if it was the Mark II.
Blaze.
It was Blaze. Well done.
Well done.
Yeah, it was Blaze. Yeah.
Because the pillar box bit was carbon.
Yes, it was Blaze. And anyway, I thought I was 18. In fact, it was just before my 18th birthday, I think. And I thought I was the bee's knees. I just thought this was like a Ferrari. It was so low.
We had all those dials inside.
Yeah, I just thought this was the great. And I still think actually MGB GT is a very nice looking car. I just thought this was just, I don't know. Anyway.
They're tiny by today's standards.
Tiny.
When you see them there.
Yeah. And I remember that the seatbelt didn't work, Nick. And my mum wouldn't let me drive it until
You'd repaired the seatbelt.
Until I had a new seatbelt, which was probably reasonable because I think she could see that I was going to be driving this thing quickly and probably beyond my ability. And I did. And I just thought it was great.
I had a similar experience. I turned up home with a Triumph Spitfire, which has the same 1360 engine, 6-bore head, as your Herald. And I pulled onto the drive. My mother ran out the front door and said, "Take it back. It's a ticket to die."
Well, don't forget,
I lived.
Well, unlike you, I never went down the motorbike route, so I was sort of on reasonable ground. I wasn't asked. I never did ask for a motorbike.
So you got yourself into an MGB GT.
I did, and I did you talked about customisation. I put the fog lights on the front, driving lights,
nice.
The badges, the MG Owners Club, and the
badge bar.
No, the badge bar. It was set in. Everything had to be sort of laid out the front, and I bought those black and silver number plates. Do you remember with the
Oh, they were like ribbed.
Like ribbed, yeah. I bought those.
So machined, weren't they?
That's it. Yeah, I thought they looked great.
They were the business, didn't they?
Yeah. Rim embellishers on the wheels. I even bought those
chrome silhouette.
And it was on fitting those that I realised that the lower half of the car was made of filler.
The drill went straight through.
Yeah. Quick, get them on to cover the mess we've made.
People used to glue them on to make them structural part of the car. They were all, for years they were seen as the big cover-up.
Well, I didn't know that at the time, but that's what they proved to be. But anyway, I don't think I ever loved the Triumph because it was fleeting. But the MG I did really love that car. I did, and then travelled again, went on holiday in it, and travelled a lot in that car. Loved it, and it was totally reliable. You just
kept ticking along.
Just think about that sort of lack of servicing and mechanical care. Really, I wasn't doing that. I was polishing it till it was polished through, but I wasn't doing much servicing.
When I was that age, we used to polish a car. We used to get a tape measure, pull a tape measure out. And if you could read the numbers in the reflection, that was how many inches of shine you had. So if you could only read 3 inches, you could see the number 3 on the tape measure in the reflection.
I've never heard that.
It was our own way of calculating who had the shiniest car.
I've never heard that.
I thought it was the only people in the world who's ever done it.
Well, that sill cover up, is interesting because that was not an old car. When I had it, I think it was.
Yeah, but Blaze was a 1973, 74.
Yeah, I think it was a 72 car, and it was barely 10 years old. And anyway,
was that the time when British London were having their troubles?
Yeah.
And the quality of the steel wasn't as good.
Well, the car was rotten. It had been painted.
When it was manufactured.
Well, no. I mean, my example, as proven by fitting the sill covers, at 10 years old, had clearly been filled and painted, and of course after two winters it all broke out. It was all breaking out around the headlamps, erupting, despite the fact I was cleaning it.
So did that herald the end of your relationship with that car? It was beginning to...
Well, I think it just was, again, it was the progression. I mean, and of course it's another financial thing that that was quite an expensive car for me to run at the time. And in terms of buying it, that was all in. That was everything I had to buy it.
Fantastic.
So I had to, I don't think there was a pound left after having bought it.
Insured it and taxed it.
Yeah, I think it was, it was all in. Anyway, and I think
how much was a gallon of fuel then?
Oh God, I can't remember.
'Cause I remember being in a Mark 1 Cortina, and it went to £1 a gallon.
Right.
Amazing.
In fact, you just reminded me of the trigger to why the first car, the Triumph, had to go, because it was using more oil than it was using petrol. And I remember I used to stop at this little garage on the way home and I'd buy another. And the bloke inside said, you'll have to do something about that. He said, you're buying more oil than you are fuel from me. And that was the trigger to move it on, and the engine was warm. Anyway, so the MG was, I realised it was a sort of, it turned, to use a...
Yeah, you clearly loved it. But
I did love it, but
what was the turning point?
The turning point was I realised that it turned, that it was rotten. I didn't want to spend money repairing the rust, I just wanted out. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I was increasingly interested in the classic car scene, and I moved to a... Are we ready for that? For the next one?
Oh yes, let's hear about it.
I think what I wanted was a Triumph TR6.
I was about to say, what was in the firing line?
Yeah.
What was the shortlist?
What I wanted was a Triumph TR6, because that was...
Me too.
Yeah, did you? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I didn't want a TR4 or a TR5.
There was a dark blue one with 15-inch wall-face wheels, and that back panel painted off-white. And pinstripe, is it pinstripe tyres, white wall
tyres, yeah.
Oh my God, I wanted that car so bad. And the guy looked so cool driving it around.
Something about it.
As they take off then.
Yeah, they flared at the back.
Oh.
Yeah, that seemed like, that's what I wanted. I wanted a TR6, and there was a chap I worked with at General Motors. His brother had one, and his brother was very cool. And this car, and I just thought, oh God, that's just it. But I don't really know why that never came to. I think maybe I might have been dissuaded from that in the family. I don't remember. Anyway,
they had injection issues, didn't they, with that Lucas?
They did, yeah, they did. But I don't think that was the reason why I didn't. I did go and see one, and I think I passengered in one. I think I might have passengered in this friend's brother's one, and not being underwhelmed by it, because hey, it was a pretty uncomfortable car for a tall person. Right. I think that might have been something to do with it. It was a pretty narrow, cramped car, which the MG wasn't actually.
They used to look. Well, I remember seeing them. They looked big.
But they did, yeah. They did.
One now, they're small.
Yeah. Well, yes, they had that sort of big Ely type reputation, didn't they? But I never did that, and I was, in terms of finding cars then, well, it was the paper, or classic car magazines.
So this is pre-Auto Trader?
Oh, certainly. No, hang on, yeah, I don't know about printed Auto Trader. I don't know about
because Auto Trader was a Bible.
Yeah, Exchange and Mart, I remember.
Exchange and Mart.
Exchange and Mart, I think, was nice. Actually, no, I don't think you would get anybody at 18 years old to the attention span to look through an Exchange and Mart, because it's a pretty boring publication. No photographs.
I remember poring over it.
So did I. No photographs. just tiny little line adverts.
It's exciting getting it from the newsagents. It's quite heavy as well.
It was, yeah. I wish I still had one actually. But as I mentioned earlier, that Thoroughbred and Classic Cars was a monthly purchase, and I saw, and I found, because I kept all my magazines, I have they're not in the house, and I have a garage which is literally lined from floor to ceiling on 3 walls with thousands of car magazines.
Wow.
So I have them all, and I love the sort of lucky dip approach of taking a group of them, looking back, and then looking at the cars I highlighted. And sort of
so your own highlighting's still there.
my own highlighting's still there, and I love
Fantastic.
I love finding that as a sort of lucky dip rather than I know where everything is.
Yeah.
And I found in that magazine a Volvo 1800E, which again there's a photograph here. Oh, there's the Herald. There's the Herald. I knew I had a picture of it. Anyway, that was.
So this is the Saints car.
That's the Saints car.
Huge street cred.
Well, I thought so.
I think you're right.
I thought so. But it was. I mean, it was a year older than the MG, and
Was it less rusty?
it was less rusty. It was actually my first entry or realisation into a beautiful low mileage car. Neither of the other two were. They were a case of.
So this was what I call a Lulu.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It was a very low mileage car. It was quite expensive. It was sort of premium priced. I mean, I think it was only 20-something thousand miles, and it was a big stretch. It was a big stretch to buy this car, and I can remember going to see it with my dad and him cajoling me, let's say, you won't find another car like this.
So he recognised the
He would
quality of low mileage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I did yet realise, I was starting that to realise, but I realised, through him, I realised that, hang on, this is a standout.
I think there's nothing more special than finding an ultra low mileage.
Yeah, it was, I agree. That's my, I agree, I think that's.
I love it.
Yeah, a bit of a holy grail.
And the hunting you do to get there.
Yeah. I mean, actually, I suppose the point is, prior to that, I couldn't afford to be as fussy. You had a budget, and you wasn't going to buy the low mileage gem. But in fact, I found the receipt for the Volvo the other day. My mum found it, and it was in '83, £2,895, which I think is about £8 to 10 grand now, something like that. So
Well, in 1983,
we're at 83. Yeah.
I bought an XR4i, which was £6,000.
Jeez. Well, there you are. That
was huge.
That was huge money, Nick.
It's huge money for me, sure.
Yeah. You were all in.
I was all in.
Yeah.
83 on the A. It was a pre-power steering.
I remember the car. I was driving one. Yeah.
So you're in your Volvo. You've got the
Yeah.
same music playing on the 8-track.
It actually had a cassette player. That car had a sort of mounted, hanging down in front of the passenger
It
cassette.
used to sell a little console that you could screw
that's
in.
it. Yeah, it was like that. And anyway, it wasn't a sports car. It was a GT. It was a very high quality,
Intercontinental.
long-legged car. It didn't handle at all well, but it was a very comfortable, long-legged, high-quality car. And interestingly enough, I don't know how many years later, and I'm sorry I don't have these photographs, but I was at Goodwood Revival 5 years ago or something like that, and there it was in
Your old car?
my car in the car park, and had some photographs taken with it. Was interested to see that the divot on the passenger armrest was still there from where I threw my briefcase in it
No.
those years before. And
If you were offered to have it back, would you buy it back, or are those memories?
no, funny enough, no, because actually, to sort of take that story on a stage, last year, I think it was, at the Classic Car Show auction in the NEC, there it was. And I was with my son Christian, and I said, Christian, that's my old car then. And we sat in it and so on. And so it was for sale.
Reminisce.
And I didn't want it back. I
It's been sullied by other hands.
No, not that. I just didn't. I didn't. It wouldn't be me now. You know, I just wouldn't want it. I mean, there are cars, crikey, yeah, I would love back, but not that one. Funny enough.
So you've got long legs now. You've got
long legs.
Intercontinental tourer. You've aligned yourself with one of the most dynamic.
Yes, something interesting happened.
Right.
Something interesting happened. I had been a voracious car magazine reader. And in fact, funnily enough, at this time, I think I now had what I thought was my dream job, and that was in product planning at Vauxhall Motors.
Right.
And responsible, and hey, I was surrounded by filing cabinets full of brochures of cars.
Wow.
We used to do all the comparisons between.
So was your interest in car magazines, was that its birthplace?
No, no.
Before that?
No, before that. I mean, always. I mean, I remember my dad used to bring them home because he used to be away during the week and bringing home, in particular, Car. So Car magazine, which of course is still a title, which was.
Didn't Clarkson write for Car later?
He might have done. I don't know.
No, he wrote for Performance Car.
Yes, you're right. Yes, he did. Performance Car. I was introduced to Car by my dad.
Car is
in the 70s.
A little bit industry based, wasn't it?
It was a little bit alternative. It wasn't
only consumer. Or was it?
I think it was. It was the first magazine that was critical of cars.
Right.
And that's what I sort of grew, perhaps not realising at the time, grew to love the writing in it and the fact that they were critical of cars. And they had a thing called The Good, the Bad and the Ugly.
Right.
And I can remember reading this and being particularly, I found they were the Japanese cars at the time. They were really critical of, and they had, they would say things like, use words like horrendous.
Yeah.
Horrendous. You never.
Well, they were seen as at the time they were seen as a threat against internal industries.
Yeah. And I think
they haven't won over their quality battle yet, have they?
No.
I mean, if you look back at
it was about equipment. There was lots of equipment.
Yeah.
Sort of chintzy styling and features and a competitor and reliability, of course. Don't forget, they're reliable. But I think that sort of absorption of that magazine is where I don't really like the term car snobbery, but I sort of aligned myself with this magazine that everything they thought was good was good, and they loved Italian cars. They were Alfa Romeos, Lancias.
I can see there.
And
they were moulding you.
They were moulding me. I was being moulded, and I was happy to be moulded. I was a willing mouldee, and I started to sort of think. So the Volvo was not really a car. They would have thought that was a poor handling. Not.
I mean, in defence of the Volvo, I still think that's a very stylish.
It is a stylish car. Yeah, it's a stylish car. But I
didn't have the dynamics to back it up.
Didn't have the dynamics, and I was very influenced by, as I say, the writing, and they were Alfa, Lancia.
Weren't Alfa having a terrible time with
Not then, not 70s.
When did they get their corrosion cars?
80s. Oh well, they were corroding in the 70s, but their reputation hadn't
caught up.
It was a few years before that happened, and I would have been blind to that actually. And I can remember, I bet most car enthusiasts have got their first copy of the Observer's Book of Automobiles, and there's mine.
Obviously. I still know where mine's from.
There you are. There's mine with my name and my phone number in case it should be lost at my address. And I would pore over this, and this is the 73 edition. And I can just remember being obsessed with the, even really what were quite mundane looking Alfa Romeos. An Alfa Sud, an Alfetta, and a 2000 Berlina. And it just, anyway, I was moulded to going down the Alfa Romeo route. And I think prior to that actually, my dad and I, he had a hobby car, let's call it. Which I suspect was a mixture of him always wanting one and it being something to keep me
Quiet.
And it was a Rover.
So he had a daily drive.
He had a company car. He had a Ford Granada company car that he was driving every day, and he bought a Rover 3.5 Coupe B5B.
Yeah. Started
low roofline. Yeah, and I still love them to this day. I think they are
handsome looking car.
Really handsome car. I think they're just a stunning, handsome, British, elegant, but not feminine in any way. It's just a.
Did the Prime Minister run one?
Saloon. So the government.
I can still picture it putting it outside the tent.
Yeah, the government bought and stockpiled these cars, the last of them, and so we're using them right up until the end of the 70s, maybe into the 80s. Margaret Thatcher was using one until she transferred to a bulletproof Daimler, I think. Anyway, the Rover he bought, and we would go to car shows in it, and it was a social hobby car.
But that was pre-Volvo 1800.
That was at the same time as the 1800, and then we sold that car because we would do things together. So we sold it, and because of my Italian passion, we bought together. We started buying cars together.
Right.
So the hobby car in the family. I was living at home at the time. And we bought a Lancia 2000 Coupe, Pininfarina Coupe.
That sounds very exotic.
A photograph of that thing for you. So this is the snobbery, because this was very much a car magazine car.
So this is a thoroughbred, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Just the sort of, I suppose, connoisseur's car. It was a connoisseur's car when it was new. And in fact, this is a day somewhere in Cambridge where it won the concours at the Lancia Motor Club Day. It was a proud day for us. Anyway, so we had this lovely Lancia, and going back to what you said earlier, very low mileage, original.
Another Lulu.
Superb car, yeah, really lovely car. Not very exciting, maybe for not particularly sporty, but very exciting. And then we must have got a bit brave, and we bought together an Alfa Romeo 1750 GTV, the little Bertone 105 series car.
Front-wheel drive?
Rear-wheel drive. Little.
Sweet.
Yeah, so that was at the Alfa Romeo concours, so we were starting to sort of go to those shows.
That is classic.
So we had that and the Lancia at the same time, and I think.
So that cemented the
Italian thing, the sort of connoisseur's choice of it, despite all their faults, because they had many, but they were. There was just something about them, and I felt right.
So when you were driving along, you were in an Italian sharp suit.
Yeah. Sometimes, yeah. And I think then there were a number of Alphas after that just had a 2000 Spider, the Camtail, Spider
Nice.
car. That was a nice car. Again, after,
If you look back at that period in your life when you had those cars, is there one special car?
not yet. Haven't got there yet.
Not right then.
No, they were sort of I think of that group that we just spoken about, the one that's
So how long were you keeping them? You can't be keeping them that long.
a year or two, not more than that.
Right.
Yeah, not more than that. Because there's always something else we wanted. There's always sort of, what's the next?
You were peeping over the fence.
Yeah. We were peeping over the fence, and that's a good way of putting it. I was peeping over the fence.
And what did you find on the other side of the fence?
Well, there were a couple more Alphas, I think a GTV6, and a couple more Lancias. I had a Lancia Gamma Coupe.
And lovely exhaust sound, didn't they? Those cars?
Oh yeah, the Alpha was. I can remember I was one of those people that went to London and drove through the tunnels with the window down because it's. I don't know if you're allowed to do that anymore, right?
I found it. I was under that bridge towards the gate as well the other day. Dropped the cob down.
You are allowed still to do it then. Yeah.
Oh,
I don't think there's
I
don't think there's any law against that.
I can't help myself.
I can't help myself now. I don't think I've got anything that would necessarily sound good in the tunnel now. So anyway, that was so peeping over the fence. Yeah. I then so I went through a few more Lancias, Gamma Coupe, Monte Carlo, which was the
Like a Targa roof.
Targa roof. That was the car where the front brakes used to lock up. Do you remember that? They took it out of production because the front brakes used to. I don't think I've got a picture of that. And they did. They were terrible, the brakes. Anyway, and then I think I then had a bit of a hiatus. I got married. Yeah, got married. And but even getting and moved. So we moved and so I was special carless. So I was in the company car land at that point. Although I still managed to get one of the last ever Lancias registered in the UK as my company car. I don't know how I managed that, but it did.
So you were furiously flying your Italian flag.
Anyway, I don't know if the Italian flag was waning, but anyways, back to the peeping over the fence. So we moved, and I perhaps gave it a year before I caved in and thought we're going to have something else. And I peeped over and decided I'd like a Porsche 911.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Good peeping.
Good peep. It was a good peep. Good peep. And yeah, and I had that car.
So what year was that? What model 911 was that?
It was a 70s. I think it was called a Carrera 3 litre.
With the Fusellas.
It didn't have the cookie cutter wheels. Again, I'm sorry I don't have a...
The cookie cutter?
Cookie cutter, yeah, that's what they were called. They were called cookie cutter.
Yeah.
They had no whale tail on the back. It was
It was a coupe.
It was a coupe, sort of an ice cream metallic with red tartan seats.
Nice.
And anyway, that was interesting, that car, because of course I thought it was the greatest thing. And in some respects it was, but I can remember really clearly, we lived in Hampshire at this point, and driving around the lanes, and I think Eleanor was with me, and overstepping it on a country lane on the front end, skipping forward, understeering forward, and then biting, and then the back coming,
snatched down.
Just thinking I'm not good enough for this. This is not. It's not for me.
So did that end your relationship?
That moment, I realised that with that particular car, once that happens, and you realise that you're not somebody that can be doing that and getting on top of it and controlling it. If you're only driving it occasionally, you're not not sort of at one with it. You just we then moved again, and I sold it, and I suppose the peeping then started again. Peeping started, but I think not only we moved, and then the babies came along. That's right. Then my son Christian came along, and I'm trying to think how long I was peeping for. And then came quite a big step up.
Right.
And I don't quite know how with this particular, with this next car, I said to my dad, "Do you want to do this sort of half and half thing again? How do you fancy that?"
Yeah.
I said, because I found a car. I found a car that I remember going to see with Eleanor, who was, I don't know, I think she was 8 months pregnant at the time as we were looking at this car, and I sort of look back now and think, what on earth were we doing? You know, it was an Aston Martin V8 Series 2.
Nice.
Owned by, I can't remember his name, but he was a member of the Tears for Fears group.
Right.
Tears for Fears.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to rule the world.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
I think that I was not. Anyway, he kept this car at his recording studio in Bath.
Previous celebrity owner.
Previous celebrity owner, and it was in the recording studio, and I just fell absolutely, you know.
You had to have it.
Low mileage, just anyway. Devastated not long after to hear, "Oh, we sold it." I thought, "Oh dear, okay." And then so another.
So you'd been to see it. You
Been to see it.
hadn't done the deal.
I hadn't done the deal, and I dithered too long. When I called back,
It's gone.
gone, and it took me quite a long time to get over that. I think maybe the peeping stopped for a bit, and I think so. My son had already been born. And 4 months after he was born, I had to call to say, "Oh, that sale's fallen through."
They'd sound
Are
like
you still interested? Because it was going to go to Spain, I think, the scars, and I think that's to say they'll get fallen through. I said yes, and so I bought this Aston Martin V8.
Manual gearbox.
Manual gearbox, 5-speed, ZF, fuel injected, Series 2. And
That is a big step.
it was a big step, and it was a very low mileage car. I think it was 20,000 miles, something like that. Really, really special car, and we had it. I took all the advice, you know, about having it inspected,
Right.
and we had it inspected by, I can't remember his name, quite a sort of leading Goldsmith. It was Goldsmith, that's right, Goldsmith in Young. "Would you inspect this car for me for 200 quid or
So
something?"
Goldsmith and Young and Aston Martin dealer.
No, I think they were a specialist. They might have been Aston dealers at one time. Anyway, it was Mr. Goldsmith took us out in this car, and I subsequently, I didn't know at the time, but he raced Astons, and he drove this car with my dad wedged in the back as fast as probably it had ever been in its life, and certainly it was never driven like that again with me.
Like Thunder Road.
Absolutely to its limit, checking everything, you know, along the A303, you know, down in Hampshire, Wiltshire. And anyway, we got it back, and he wrote a report saying, "I think you should buy it." So we did buy it, and that was a wonderful car. And that won its class at Woburn for most original Aston Martin in, whatever it was, 2000, I think it was.
So having taken the leap with capital expenditure, if you like, to buy it,
Yeah.
what was the ownership experience like of owning
It was
a car of that calibre?
It was interesting because
Much more a hand-built car.
everybody loved it. Everybody loves an Aston Martin. So it didn't attract envy. You know, I used to get a bit of that with Porsche. You know, people don't really love 911s. Can't enthusiasm.
The Aston was very much best.
Aston was sort of, you know, had a bit of a glow about it that it was So everybody loved it, you know, and never got. I mean, we'd go out for dinner in it, and you know, we'd sort of used it a bit.
Yeah.
I think now, when I would, you know, what it's worth now, you just wouldn't do that, you know. Just, but my first insight into Aston Martin running costs was there was a specialist over in Burton-on-Trent or somewhere. I don't know if he's still with us, and I can't remember his name now. Anyway, I took it over there for I think it was just a check over. It was a check over and a
Oil change.
Oil change, and I don't think it was anything more than that. And it was about £1,200, and that was my realisation that, oh blimey, you know what? And part of the value of those cars is you have to have a great big file showing that you're doing that. You know, that's just sort of ever in.
Right, you're committed to it. You can't.
You can't sort of step out and have it done at the local garage. You know, it has to have this provenance with the specialists, and I think I might have had one or two more with there, and I remember I think I had it 5 years or so, 5-6 years, and I can remember something was not right with the steering. Power steering, I think it was leaking fluid or something.
Yeah.
And I panicked, and I thought, oh my God, you know.
I can't face another bill.
Well, and just not knowing what that was going to be, you know, I mean, because we were already potentially talking about thousands. And the car hadn't been, this is the ridiculous thing, I think we paid £16,000 for it. So, you know, it's a £100,000 car now.
Amazing.
And I couldn't bring myself to spend £3,000 or £4,000. So I sold it. Sold it very easily, very quickly, and subsequently somebody has, you know, spent a fortune on modifications and bigger engines, and it is now in Australia. I had an email from the new owner, and it's in Australia. I think I sent you the link to the car that was advertised, you know, and so that's the other interesting thing is with a car as special as that, once you're attached to it, you keep getting contacted, you know.
Oh yeah, you become part of the history of the car.
Yeah, you get contacted by saying, you know, what was it?
I've seen an advert with my own name, once owned by.
Oh, I did have it. That's interesting. I had an interesting story. I did have a horror story with the Porsche.
Right.
That I contacted the previous owner.
Right.
Oh, it must have been in the file. And I called up and I got through to this chap, and he clearly had a lot of cars, and he said, well, which one was it? Which Porsche are you talking about? I said, well, it was a green Carrera. He said, oh, he said, yeah, that was a nice car until the truck drove into the side of it.
Oh no.
And of course, once somebody's told you that, you can see.
Forever tainted.
Yeah, you can see. Well, that's why there's that. That's why there's a door mirror on that side and on this side.
Right.
Anyway, that's I've forgotten that. So anyway, that was the Aston Martin, and we had two youngest children at that point, and it probably fair to say it
building
really
a family,
fit
with
other commitments. But hey, it's one of those things. I'm glad that I owned it, and it was a very special car. Very special car.
So, is that a car that you would buy back?
I'd never be able to afford it, but if I could, I would have that particular car back. Yeah.
Another one the same wouldn't cut it. It would have to be that car.
That car. Yeah, that car. Because that one. I think if I was in a position of being able to, I would have that car back. Yeah, and that's the first one of perhaps the list that we've spoken about that I feel that way.
So what came next?
Well, then I got rational and thought, okay, what do we? There were four of us, two little children.
Yeah.
I don't know, 3 and 4. If we're going to have if Dad's going to be satisfied by having a hobby car or whatever, we need to
So
have
did you have daily drivers?
Yeah, I had
So
company
you had
cars. Yeah,
a
yes.
Volvo estate?
I think I had BMW 5 Series or something. I was very, very fortunate and had very nice company cars, And
So it was a purely hobby car?
hobby car, and I couldn't not have one. There always had to be, there always had to be one really.
Yeah.
So the peeping just couldn't last very long. And so I tried to rationalise the peeping with, well, how about something that we can all get
the whole family?
not necessarily enjoy the car, but we can all go out in somewhere, right? So I saw.
So we're talking four-door saloon?
No, we're not. We're talking convertibles, but four-seater. And on my way to work, I used to pass this lovely house, and one day the garage was open and there was a Triumph Stag sitting in the garage. And I used to drive past, and one day I think I was leaving, and a very elderly couple in the garden.
Oh my God, you couldn't resist it, could you?
I had to stop and said,
I've admired that car for years.
He said, coming out.
I think you're selling it.
I think he was selling. Well, I think he's pretty elderly, and anyway, had it new. I bought it new from the dealer in Nottingham. VTV 80S, so one of the very last. I think it was registered on New Year's Day.
So what colour was it?
White.
Oh, white, okay.
White, with a white hard top, black trim.
Yeah.
And it was
Manual gearbox.
automatic, which was, come to that, but that was the downside. It was automatic, but it was superb. It was very low mileage.
Is that a 3-speed automatic?
3-speed. That was the problem. It didn't have long legs. It had very short legs.
Triumph Stag was a wife's car.
It was a wife's car. Yeah, it was exactly what it was. It was a very expensive shopping hairdresser's car. Despite the fact that
beautiful sound.
Yes, despite the fact it sounded very, very macho, really. It was a beautiful sound. But I suspect, and it had the most terrible overlight steering. Sort of very overlight power steering.
I've had 2 Stags.
Very
light steering. Feels ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
You feel like the wheels tyres are pushing over.
Yeah.
It's a weird feeling.
Weird. I suspect it would have been a nicer car with a manual. I think that would have perhaps transformed it, because really it felt as though you get up to 60, 70, and that was as fast as
it was over revving.
Absolutely revving away, sort of 4,000 revs. But for bimbling around lanes with the children in the back, I had seatbelts put in the back.
Lovely.
And it was, and it had a bit of safety with the
the robot.
and it fitted. It was the concept worked.
So that satisfied your addiction?
Temporarily.
Yeah.
I think what I decided was, well, we're only going to use it in the summer rather, and so I sort of sell them at the end of the. I think it's probably this addiction about wanting to trying other things really, trying other cars, and I sold it. And
there's a hunting thing as well when you're buying
a hunting thing, definitely.
They're pouring through the magazines.
Definitely, that's absolutely. And I still got that. Crikey, that never goes away.
Doesn't go away.
No.
It's like a habit.
But you can get to the stage where you're happy with what you've got, but the hunting thing never goes away.
Well, what happens is, if you've got a car that you really like, there's only a small number of cars that will outpace it.
Well,
so it takes more hunting to find those.
Yes. Well, I just remembered, I had a very, very good friend of ours, Edward Wheeler, who's sadly no longer with us. He once said, when I had the Aston Martin, and he said, "You know what the problem is, Adrian?" I said, no, what's the problem? He said, "You've peaked too early." And actually, I was thinking at the time, but he was absolutely right. I kind of sort of
peaked too early.
leapt into this
So the Stag was a
Yeah, I mean, I can remember when I still had the Aston Martin, that ever-increasing trajectory was still in my mind, and I can remember.
What were you thinking? What were you thinking was the next step after
Ferrari.
Oh, right.
A Ferrari.
So then you're back.
Very, very specific. In fact, it would still be on my list. 365 GTC 4.
Daytona.
No, not the Daytona. GTC 4. The GTC 4 was a sort of
365 GTC.
365 GTC 4.
Didn't that look a bit like your Alphas?
It was actually the nickname in Italian. I don't know what the Italian one was. The Hunchback. It had a sort of very sort of curvaceous side profile, but quite angular back and a rubber nose. Anyway, I can remember. We were talking about the highlighting. I cut out this little thing, and I had it up on the thing there, and I used to look at this picture, and it was twice the price of the Aston, but it still didn't go away. It used to taunt me. I used to look at this picture, lady owner, low mileage, and
It's ticking all the boxes.
yeah, but hey, there was not the wherewithal. There was not the wherewithal with all the other stuff that's coming with children and everything. So anyway, but it was always nice to have this little thing.
Reminder.
But the Stag was the rational thing to do. Then sold it. The concept worked, the four-seater. Then come the spring, the following year, looking for the same concept, I bought a BMW 323i Bauer conversion. You will know exactly what that is.
I know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
My mother had a 2002 Bauer conversion.
Right. Okay. Same thing. With
So the hard top in the middle and the hood that just drops down.
Exactly. Quite not as neat as the Stag.
No.
It was a bit cumbersome, all that framework, and but
Well, didn't it retain some of the gutters?
it did. It retained the side doors are the same, and the gutters, and yeah, it did. It did retain the gutters, but very clever.
It was a saloon that had been converted as a
Exactly.
convertible. It wasn't manufactured as a convertible.
It was converted by Bauer. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, from a saloon. But it was
That's
very
crazy.
clever with the panel that slid under the boot. You open the boot.
Yes, it went in.
Yeah, very, very clever. Anyway, that worked because we could use that as a leisure car, if you like, at the weekend, so we could actually use it to go
Yeah.
places. That was good. And of course,
Smooth 6.
very smooth. Yeah, the 323. It was actually interesting. You always remember a thing about the car. So
Yeah.
my memory of the Stag, terrible light steering.
Yeah.
Aston, what was the memory of the Aston?
I found my drove this. It was the heat. You'd open the door and you'd feel the heat come out.
Yeah, yes, yeah, I used to get that, yeah. From the Aston, that
Yeah.
used to do that.
And Jetsons were the same.
Jensens, yeah, I always wanted a Jensen. But the memory of the BMW was, for some reason, it had been a London car all its life in St John's Wood, but somebody had ordered it without power steering. This terrible, heavy
Oh my
steering that just, I mean, I'm not a wimp, but God, it just felt as though it was hard work.
Hard work parking.
Hard work. A 5-speed manual. It was a nice car, but it was not a keeper. It was a nice car, but it was not a keeper. So this concept of sort of something new every year, not
That was born, was it?
Yeah, I'm not marrying it. I'm just sort of
Renting it.
renting it for a year.
Custodian for a year.
Custodian for a year, and I then that carried on that thing and chomped through a whole series since, really. But I suppose the thread I was always looking for, there was two things really: cars that I had always liked and thought I'd like to try one of those,
Yeah.
but not forever. Let me just and it had to be a low mileage original car. I'm not interested in modified or restored, really. I'd rather have a really low mileage original car.
So, how old were they? Classic cars?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they're all would be certainly even at the time. Maybe the BMW might not be considered classic at the time. I mean, I suppose they were interesting because some of them were cars that you were still buying out of Auto Trader rather than out of Classic and Sports Car or Classic Magazine. You know, they were on that cusp of are they or aren't they?
Yeah. That Bauer is a sort of.
At the time, that was an Auto Trader car.
Yeah.
That was not a classic car.
It's an everyday car with a very interesting addition of the roof.
That's true. That's exactly right. And I'm sort of a little bit vague about. I'm still doing all the peeping, so as soon as the car's gone, the peeping intensifies. And I
think that's the most exciting experience.
Definitely, yeah. It's the finding. It's the finding. And
is it a Neanderthal throwback in it that we have to hunt?
It could be.
For something. And all that's left for us to hunt is cars.
It could be that. I've never thought about that. But that could be it.
It's deep inside you, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I don't think I ever sort of start out with a list. I never sort of wrote down a list of, right, I want one of these. It was just a sort of general concept of a car that would have been really special when I was young and couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
Which I could say to a lot of people. But I wasn't sort of aligned to any one mark of car. You know, it could be.
Well, what happened for me? I would be looking at a wide spread of cars, and then I would see one instantly, and then I'd home in on it, and I had to know everything about it, and everything about the market for them. So you really focus.
Yeah. Well, of course, one of the, I think, well, it's not a disadvantage, but with the internet, which is what, sort of 2000, 2001, when it all, you know, but all of a sudden everybody can be an expert in everything, you know, and can be a bit wearing sometimes, particularly when you were sort of selling a car, where you could have people that were the armchair.
The buyer knows everything.
The buyer knows absolutely everything, yeah.
Armchair expert.
Armchair expert. But I suppose that the thread was, had to be a 2+2, because I still wanted to be able to, two-seater's no good, it needs to be a 2+2 so we can all go out.
You're still in the family in tow.
Yeah, and it needed to be, not exotic necessarily, but something that was, you know, when it was new, when it was new, that would have been, oh my gosh, that's an unattainable car.
So what were those cars then?
Well, after the I'm sure I've missed a couple, but anyway, there came a Jaguar XJS actually, VLG 644R. Where are you now? A very, very low mileage car in an awful colour called green sand with cinnamon interior.
That's a 4.2.
V12.
V12.
Yeah. This is one of the sort of first with the black bumpers and yeah. So 77. I mean, I vacillate between, my God, that's a terrible looking car, to, that's a great looking car. And I did when I had it, and I do now.
I've driven those, isn't it? There's a sort of sense of occasion when you go out.
Yeah, they phenomenal engineering achievement in terms of the performance.
How they cram it all in there?
Yeah, engineering.
You open the bonnet, you can't put a 50p in there.
If it fell down, you never find it again.
Never get it back.
But just the combination of the performance and the silence.
Yeah,
That was my memory.
unbelievably smooth.
Yeah, and the ride, and it didn't handle, it handled very well actually, soft though it was. But it was a phenomenal achievement. But I think the reason I bought that was it was a very low mileage car, and I can't remember if it was one owner or two owners, but anyway, it's a very low mileage car, and I just wanted one, and hey, you know, it was, and it was small. There was kids in the back, put the seatbelts in the back, and we could actually go out in it, and you know,
It fitted the bill.
fitted the bill. And I do remember driving it. I think I bought it from Sheffield, coming down the M1.
So while this was going on, what happened to the Italian flavour that you?
I think that not dissolved because it was still there, and it came back later on actually. But it just, I think some people do get absolutely stuck in that. Not stuck, that's not the right word, but they realise that they love something and then that's it. They will always have.
They're blind to everything else.
Yeah, and I think I just wanted to be a bit more promiscuous, really, and just sort of jump around and find different things, but there were always cars that when they were new, that's great, So same pattern, Nick sold it at the end of the summer.
Yeah.
The peeping started probably that afternoon.
All winter.
And I then, so sort of going through this 4-seater thing, I then really went off-piste with the next one, but it was a car that I always admired.
So is this still a 4-seater?
4-seater.
Let me see if I can home in on it.
Right. Okay. So British. Not that's not
British 4-seater.
British 4-seater sports car.
And built 1980s.
70s. Still 70s. I suppose that's my core.
It's your core hunting ground.
Core decade, 70s. Yeah. Innovative. A car that made the Jaguar seem like a dinosaur at the same age. So 70, so we're talking 77, 76, 77. And it made the Jaguar seem like a dinosaur in terms
Not
of...
TVR.
No?
4-seater.
4-seater. So you've got an engine of not quite a third of the, more than a third of the capacity of the Jaguar, but...
2.5 litre.
No, 2 litre.
2 litre. A British 2 litre.
British 2 litre sports GT. Probably more on the sports than GT.
Built in the 70s.
If I could say one word, not the mark, but if I was to say the word wedge. A wedge.
A wedge.
A wedge. One of the most extreme wedges.
Well, the wedges, there's a Princess and an Ambassador.
Now we're talking sports. Sports cars.
That's 4-seater.
2-litre.
A wedge.
Wedge.
TR7.
No, not TR7.
A wedge.
A wedge.
There's a TVR 280SL. SE.
No,
A wedge.
it's a wedge. The most extreme wedge. It's a bit obscure. Would you like to see?
Yes.
Can I reveal? Can I
Reveal.
reveal the box?
I can't believe I can't get it. The wedge rings a bell. I'm going to kick myself for this.
It is a Lotus Elite.
Oh my god. Pacific Blue.
Right, I don't remember.
I sold a Lotus Elite to a man.
Did you?
And he brought it back. He was complaining about this long list of problems.
Yeah,
We sent to a Lotus dealer. And they inspected the car and said it's one of the best ones we've ever seen. We recommend you buy it. We couldn't believe it. It's got a 907 in it, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. With a sort of wood. Anyway, I still...
Lots of trouble usually serious.
Yeah, I bought that from the original owner. Again, that's the theme. The original owner who had it as his company car new in '76, and it was, I suspect probably the best. It was not worth a lot of money. I think it was about 1,500 quid.
They're exotic though, aren't they?
Yeah, and it was a tremendous. What I remember about that car was the handling. You were right down in the chassis. And yet it had 4 seats. It had 4 proper seats. And I thought it was a very clever car, actually. And interestingly, I bought. He died a couple of years ago. Oliver Winterbottom, who styled and designed the car,
Right.
Who also designed and styled the TVR Tasman, hence the similarity. He was Mr. Wedge. I bought his biography the other day, and it just reminded me what a clever car it was. You know, fuel crisis had just come in, 73, 74.
So a supercar with a 2 litre engine.
2 litre engine that could do, maybe 25 instead of 12 in the XJS.
Still ran Webbers though, didn't it?
Yeah, it was a.
Webbers is still there for you. Webbers are Italian. Webbers Italian.
Yeah, Italian. Yeah. It didn't feel robust, I have to say.
Yeah,
It didn't feel like, it didn't feel like a car that I would jump in and drive to south of France in without expecting some problems.
Some drama.
But it did handle incredibly well for its age, and it came out in 73, 74, I think, 74. And I just loved that car. And anyway, so are we moving on from the Lotus? Have you recovered from that?
Where are we
I don't know
going?
if you're shocked. I then had the notion, and I've never wanted to be a collector, because I do believe that there is too many. I think, but I do think that maybe there is an ideal number, and that might be 2 put away, maybe 3, as long as you've got a daily driver that you can rely on, whatever.
So that's 4.
Well, anyway, I had the Lotus, and I.
So you admitted to changing your collecting status?
I was never a collector, no, because there was always just one. There was always just one.
Right.
Yeah, no one. But then this is the first time of me sort of migrating to having more than one, and I started the peeping, even though I still had the Lotus. And
You were peeping pre-sale
I was
of
peeping
the
pre-sale.
previously peeped car.
Yes, and I suppose my uncle used to work for Rolls-Royce in Berkeley Square, Rolls-Royce dealer,
Right.
where I had my first job in summer of not PDI in the cars, cleaning them before they went out.
Right.
I think we've had this conversation before. That there was a pre-described check sheet, prescribed check sheet of what you had to do cosmetically.
Right.
That involves taking the lambswool rugs out of their covers and putting the lambswool rugs in with them not having touched the ground. Particular polishes that you had to use, and so I used to clean the car. I was as happy as I could be doing that summer job, but absolutely brilliant. And I suppose that, you know where I'm going with this, don't you? This Rolls-Royce thing, that I was just kind of
The ultimate, the top of the
a little bit, yeah, a little bit, and not a little bit. They were, and I can always remember when I was a teenager, but I can remember the salesman, and a little bit like my uncle, incredibly snooty. Really snooty.
He was a car snob.
I'm not sure he was.
You want a part exchange? What?
He was very snooty, and he showed me. I always remember him showing me how to assess a car that was coming in as a trade-in.
Right.
And the rules of engagement for a Rolls-Royce are no different to anything else. He did exactly the same. He was down on his hands and knees, looking underneath it, looking up the side of it, and which rather surprised me that there he was. But he was a take no prisoners, and I can remember him showing me how to do this. And the car he showed me how to do it on was a Rolls-Royce Corniche fixed head coupe. And I remember, and we went out in it. And I remember. It's not often that you say you were blown away, but it was almost like you were in another world.
This is much earlier in your life.
Much earlier, this time 6:15, I think, something like that. Summer job. Used to get a train.
Maybe that was part of the missing part of the story.
Could be. I've forgotten that part. I'm very happy doing that. I was very happy. But anyway, that never left me. That
So you tasted the
and I suppose an overused
forbidden
word.
fruit.
It's an overused word, unique, but it was, I think, a Rolls-Royce experience is unique, I think.
Right.
I'm not saying I've tested all, I've driven all the other things that you might compare it with, but anyway, that probably never left me, but that's probably embedded somewhere.
It left a mark.
And I suppose there's another strand, Dick, that I've forgotten is that I don't like to get on a bandwagon or overpay. I like to feel a summer.
Value for money.
Yeah, I don't like, and when I see cars.
What would you say is an example of a bandwagon car?
Oh, that's a good question.
An RS Cosworth. I don't know.
Yeah, that whole fast forward thing. I understand it because they were iconic cars when they were, Cosworths. And I mean, actually, I never touched me really, although I was. That era, I never sort of lusted after a XR3i or whatever.
Do you think your driving style is different? You're more big GT car.
Yeah. I'm not a fast. I mean, I have driven quickly, but I'm not a natural sports car driver. You've described me as a wafter. I think my natural inclination is to go sort of briskly with not a lot of effort, and I think
a brisk waft.
A brisk waft. And there is an expression that sort of goes around the magazines, GT man. I think a sort of GT type car.
A long-legged tourer.
Yeah, much more than a sports. And I suppose that was maybe me moving out of the Alpha Spiders and that sort of thing. Just felt. I always. I had this conversation with somebody the other day. When you get really tall people in little sports cars, I think they look slightly ridiculous.
With some of the windscreens here.
Yeah, so I think I sort of proportionally, I fit bigger cars better.
You fit German cars, Mercs.
Yeah. And anyway, back to the Rolls-Royce. The peeping. We go back to the peeping.
Hold on, what did you start?
I haven't sold them. This is maybe the start of.
No, what did you own?
I had the Lotus.
Right, so you were Lotus. You had a Lotus and you were peeping at the same time.
Yeah, a company car, so that was just.
That's daily drive.
And the only suppose significance of this next car is that it was my first experience with eBay, because everything else prior to that had been.
When did eBay come around? 2000.
It's good. 2005, something like that.
Maybe.
I don't know really. Anyway, I think there was probably something I was just naturally a bit wary of, just to understand it, avoided it really. And
must have been a crushing moment for Auto Trader.
Yeah.
When they had eBay turn up.
It must have been.
And their numbers must have crashed.
I never thought about that, but it must have been. Yeah. So I must have started having a look at eBay. I think it probably took a while to get comfortable with even the layout but of course the advantage is a lot of pictures. There were sort of unlimited.
Auto Trader used to get sensible man and took a photo.
That's right, a photo. Exactly, they did. Yeah. When it was a magazine. Yeah, exactly, it did.
And that was leading edge at the time.
A photo. And it seems bizarre to think about those. We used to send off a picture like that. You'd send a photograph off to a magazine in an envelope to crop down to.
In the 90s, we used to get a VHS camera, big thing like this.
Yeah.
With a VHS cassette. We would video a car and post the video cassette off the car to the customer, who was 150 miles away. I mean, it's unbelievable now. Things have changed.
Oh dear. Yeah.
So you got a Lotus.
So I started.
You're still an itch.
I've got the itch to have. I don't think there's a lot of structure to this. So there was the four-seater rationality before, and anyway, Rolls-Royce. So I typed in Rolls-Royce Corniche, and like you do, But anyway, the thread here being, I suppose I could not believe that a Rolls-Royce Corniche was available at the sort of price we're talking about.
What were they then? 30 grand?
That's 12.
Oh, really?
12. And I just, it was almost as though I have to buy that car because it can't be £12,000.
Now is the window of opportunity.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that they're sort of jumping ahead that they're ever fashionable really, but it's not that kind of car, is it? And I
always felt when you had a Rolls Royce or a big Bentley, you need an infrastructure. You need your own parking space at your factory.
well, there's a story. The story that's very relevant. Actually, you should mention that. I went up to Leeds, or was it Wakefield?
This is to look at a car.
To look at this Rolls Royce, and was met by a Mr. Walter Weimer, who must have been in his 80s, and I didn't know at the time that he was dying and he was selling all his cars, and he had been very successful establishing a Honda dealership in Leeds, and made quite a lot of money from, Honda kind of boomed in the 80s, 90s, and
Yeah.
very successful from being a silly little franchise of little cars to being anyway.
The Honda is a global brand.
Yes.
I mean, they make motorboat engines and.
I think he had the sort of franchises for everything, for mowers and everything in
All
that,
of Honda product in Europe.
in that part of the world, in Yorkshire.
Oh, right.
So he'd done very well, and he was. In fact, I met him. This is interesting. At his very first garage premises, he had a little old garage that he'd never sold, despite the fact he'd moved on to vast premises all over Yorkshire. He had this
kept his roots.
kept his little garage, and that became his man cave. So when he retired, he still went in every day to this little garage and sat in his little office upstairs. And downstairs he kept his collection of cars.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. And there was this Rolls-Royce Corniche. And again, I don't know about you, Nick, but I usually think I'm going to buy something sort of within 30 seconds of touching it, not seeing it, but touching it and getting up close. I realise that.
Yeah, you sometimes get a feeling when you look at something.
Yeah. But equally, you get something can look okay, and then you get up to touch it, and it's not right. But anyway, I knew this car was right. And anyway, we again, I had it inspected by a Rolls-Royce specialist, and they said yes, fine, and low mileage car, lovely car. And the only regret I had with Walter Weimer was that he also had a Mercedes 280 SE 3.5 in there that had done 9,000 miles.
So it's a big saloon car, big SC saloon.
Big SE saloon, and my eye was just sort of turned by the Rolls Royce, and I wasn't paying much attention to this. But he did say, well, look, everything I have.
It's for sale.
He didn't say why, but he just said, I'm looking to have a thing. And anyway, I looked at this Mercedes, and he said, I bought this car new when I first became successful in 1972. And he said, I was driving along in Leeds, and my son sunk his teeth into into my seat. And there were these teeth marks, and he was so mad that he put the car in the garage and never brought it out again.
Wow.
And there were these bite marks.
The teeth marks are still there.
And it was anyway.
That was an Uber low mileage car.
It was, yeah. And I should have said, and it would have been a big stretch. I should have said, because you talk about unicorn cars, and you can't
find again.
Yes, a unicorn car. Anyway, but I bought the Rolls Royce, and I loved it. I loved that car. I think that's just his fixed head coupe, dark green, cream inside. Just thought it was the most beautiful car.
So this was the beginning of your serious wafting stage.
This was big waft. And the thing you were talking about, garages and size and so on, I realised I didn't have a garage big enough to put it in, and found this storage that I've kept ever since. And it was a garage that was particularly long.
Right.
And anyway, and that's now full of car magazines. That's the garage full of car magazines I mentioned earlier. Anyway, the Rolls went in there, and but quite quickly realised, you know, when I said everybody loves an Aston, not everybody loves a Rolls Royce.
Oh, really?
No, that's not a car that brings out.
So you couldn't sneak into work that one day?
No. It's actually a car that now has a very limited use pattern. You can go to the Rolls Royce Owners Club, Drivers Club, Enthusiast Club meeting once a year. You know, you could maybe go to somebody, or a couple of people ask if I would do their wedding. You know, it's a car that doesn't have.
You can't nip to the shops in it?
No, but you can't even do other social stuff that's not as mundane as that in it, because it's too
ostentatious.
Too ostentatious. That's as simple as that. It's too ostentatious.
Does that apply to the big new Rolls Royce?
I suspect it does.
I thought that was a very clever move when they built that car. So they took it back to the 1950s, when a Rolls Royce or a Bentley was absolutely enormous. And you needed the...
I agree.
Like we were saying earlier, you need the infrastructure, you need your parking place.
Yeah.
The office.
Well, typically a
big drive
has that infrastructure, typically. But I wasn't comfortable. In fact, I can remember pulling up just outside the house here, and some 4 or 5 lads shouting obscenities. I thought, what have I done? But it was a Rolls Royce Grill. I mean, there's an old car that was 12 grand. It's not a car that was
hundreds of thousands.
So they didn't look at it and sort of admire it. I think because they just saw the Rolls Royce Grill. And
there was a point when Rolls Royces were scrap dealers. It was a joke almost that a scrap dealer, when he was successful, would buy himself a Rolls Royce.
Yeah, absolutely. That had that, you know, and then when they got into
like a stigma almost.
Yeah, and then of course they had all that 70s stigma with celebrity owners that you know, remain nameless, that you wouldn't necessarily want to be associated with. But it did, you know, particularly with the Shadow, it became a sort of
Jimmy Tarbuck happened, didn't
Jimmy Tarbuck, yeah,
with the number comic,
yeah. Barry Sheen, people like that had them, you know.
Barry Sheen.
Anyway, I had it, and I think
you quickly
I just didn't feel
fell out of love with it.
Well, not with the car. I was absolutely in love with the car, but going out in
limited use that you put it.
Going out in it, I fell out of love with that. But actually, just being in it and just looking at it and being in it, I was in love with that. That bit it ticked all those boxes. But it's incredible to think how two cars at the time, both early, so it was a 1973 car.
Going back to your Aston, you didn't get any bad reaction?
Quite the opposite. I got thumbs up. On the motorway, people would pull parallel with you and thumbs up.
Amazing.
Different hand gesture, pulling out parallel in the Rolls.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is amazing. Yeah. And I don't know whether I just, you know, unlucky, but that was my experience with it.
But I heard the same story. I sold the Rolls to a man who had a Merkin swap. And about a month later he rang me and said, "You've got to have this Rolls back. I can't leave the factory when the blower goes because everybody's so angry with me."
Well, that's interesting, because even when my car was new in 74, the first owner, because it had always been a Yorkshire car,
right,
had been, I think the chap, Walter, who was the second owner, I think he said he was a mill owner, which sounds a bit Dickensian, but I suppose you talk about mills up
in Doncaster.
Yeah, he was a mill owner, and he didn't take it to work. He didn't go to work in the car. And when he had the car serviced, he insisted that it was collected and taken away in a covered transporter from the house. He didn't want anyone to know he had it. So that's another angle, isn't it, on the ownership experience.
That is.
And that's in '74.
I think that's pretty heavy
Mm.
when you've got that sort of animosity.
Yeah. I'm surprised that, anyway, I mean, I don't know if that's true, but anyway, that's what I was told, was that was the case. It had to
So
be,
the Rolls had to go.
the Rolls went, yeah. And
You still kept the Lotus?
kept the Lotus, yeah, kept that for a bit, and then sold it, and then had a change of job, and just had a bit of a hiatus, really, until I started my current job, and then started the beeping again, and thought... and because I had a longer period of waiting for the beeping to start. I kind of controlled it for a bit. I controlled it for a good year, if not 18 months.
I can't believe it's a collection of magazines you weren't still paying.
Well, I still, but I was.
You weren't serious.
I wasn't buying. I was just sort of focusing on work, and then I remember then the concept of, it's just, I don't know if you've ever come across this or agree with it, but sort of cars advertised in the wrong place, and I obviously Auto Trader is now online.
I have a very good story about that, which is Lotus Carlton.
Please. Yeah.
Every Vauxhall dealer had to buy a Lotus Carlton
Right.
as part of their portfolio of cars.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't have the wherewithal to sell it. So
Right.
Lotus Carlton was so out of their comfort zone
Right.
with
Yeah.
value. The part
Yeah.
exchange, they would be offered a 911 in part exchange. They'd never seen one of those Vauxhall dealerships. And what we did is we went round and we bought all the Lotus Carltons from the Vauxhall dealers.
Right.
And then retail them. I sold one to an undertaker called True Love and Sons
Right.
in Sutton. And I didn't realise it, but undertakers are a transport business.
I suppose they are, yeah.
It actually comes down to it.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's another story for another day.
Yeah. Well, that was so. You do know the concept. Cars that are advertised in the wrong place.
Honda NSX was another one.
Oh yeah, that would be there. That's a classic case of that.
The Honda dealers didn't know what to do with it.
No.
What a great car as well.
Yeah, a great car. Yeah. My son loves those. Actually, it's interesting because he's only 25, and yet the car must be 25.
The build quality of it is amazing.
It is.
And they've got that third camshaft, haven't they? Very well done.
VTEC.
VTEC. You
Yeah,
get a pull and then you get a bit more.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's not a wafter though, Nick. It's not really for me.
No, we're digressing.
That's more you than me.
Let's hear your exploits.
That's more you. No, cars advertised in the wrong place. So so we're now in the digital world, aren't we? Of everything's.
So the wrong place, do you mean the wrong media?
Media, that's what I mean. Yeah. So I started sort of noticing, on Auto Trader, you would find cars that should really be in a classic media rather than Auto Trader. So and of course the other thing with if you're as connected as you and I are with what everything is and what to look for and how to look for it, you can quickly focus on this digital, through all the digital stuff. And anyway, I sort of started finding, sort of did a little bit of buying and trying and then selling again, just as a bit of fun rather than a bit of a hobby. And I think the first car I bought in that theme was a Daimler Sovereign, sort of Series 1, XJ shape Series 1, 40,000 mile car, 2 owners, an Auto Trader. It just that's not where it should be.
So you're saying it was wrong because it was a classic?
It's a classic, yeah. It shouldn't really be on there. And
it would have been better off in a specialist
Yeah,
Specialist
website, specialist magazine, and so therefore was, you know, could buy it very attractively and try it, and I did.
So you were buying and running for a month?
Yeah, and using them, you know, so using them as a not a daily car, but not, you know, I didn't have a company car at this point. I'd changed jobs, so I was, you know, at my own car, and ran this Daimler and sold it and made a bit of money on it and thought, well, that's all right. That's okay.
So that really then fueled your enthusiasm?
Well, then that's opening floodgates, really, because, you know, you can, what you have to, I think...
There's no justification required. It's
well,
making
no,
money.
because it's buying, trying, enjoying, and it moves on, and you might come out of it...
Quids in.
And I must have done, I don't know, I mean, I wouldn't even know the number, but we're probably talking 20, 30 cars, over 10 years, 10, 15 years, if not more. And again, the same principle of cars that you'd always...
Misplaced ads.
You misplaced ads and cars that you really like, and with, you know, at this time, so we're talking 15.
Cars that have always been snapshots as you...
Yes. So things like that were really very affordable 10, 15 years ago, Porsche 928s, BMW 635s, including an M, you know, which is now a big money car.
Yeah.
To buy a BMW M635 on Auto Trader.
Well, there's M635, you're thinking M6 with the multi-valve engine.
The multi-valve engine, yeah. So I had several 635s, you know, as daily cars, you know, and they were nice. They were nice cars.
So with the seats, we used to call them, you'd get a sports seat car.
Yes.
M6 had sports seats, M635 had sports seats.
Correct.
And there were some CSIs?
CSI, there was a regular car, was a CSI, yeah.
You could order them sports seats.
Yeah.
If you didn't, you got what we call tombstones. The seats were completely flat.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually it was in fact the ones I used to seek out, because then they were second-hand cars on Auto Trader. They were $3,000, you know, they were Highlines, the last ones with the leather dash and everything leather. And
the door caps.
Yeah, and I thought
Those funny TRX metric tyres.
Yeah, they were a problem.
Yeah.
But they and I always thought these are really nice, usable, semi-classic cars, but I can still motor properly in them, and
they had that sharp right look at the
yeah,
front.
I thought they were really
They were
car.
good-looking car.
Good-looking car.
Big car, actually.
Very big car. Yeah, they were. But a disappointment. I always felt, and they're all automatic, all those that I had, slightly underwhelming.
Manual.
But the M6.
Yeah, dogleg first, didn't it?
It didn't actually. I thought that was interesting. I thought they did. And thought, my God, I bought.
I'll tell you what car I had a dogleg first. 928 GT.
I did, yeah. Anyway, the M635 was a different kettle of fish. That was a fantastic car. Absolutely fantastic car. I had I think the number plate in mine was C635CYL, 635 SIL. Black one, black inside. It was but not expensive car. Auto Trader. I don't even know if this concept still exists. You can still get cars that are kind of misplaced, semi-classic. Must have had 3 or 4 928s, fantastic cars, you know, and so usable.
I used to think 928s were hewn out of marble.
Yeah.
They were so solid.
Yeah, and they used to...
Thirsty devils, eh?
Yeah, but absolutely planted. Yeah, planted.
Well, I sold them to a guy. About 2 hours after he'd taken it away, I got a phone from the wife. There's something wrong with that car. He's put it in a wall. Must have been, steering must have broken or something.
Mm.
I said, there'll be one person who will be interested to find out what actually happened. That's your insurance assessor. Turned out it had been a cloud burst. He floated it into a wall.
Oh my God.
On the way home.
Oh.
Bad news. Yeah.
So that's that kind of gardening. I mean, and there were several of those, and they were being used as daily car. But then sort of fairly quickly would be for sale, and then you get another one, and so on and so forth. And then there were more XJ S's, some XJS convertibles, which are, again, all same principle, also trader, not a lot of money.
So you got a car for the money?
Well, that was my principle. And
I mean, 98 when they were new.
I think we're going to have to take a break here, will we? I think we got onto the daily driving, trying cars that I just wanted, and I was working my way through.
Were you following a path, or did you just pick up what was available? Was there a direction?
No, it was picking up what was available. There wasn't a path, Nick. It was picking up. That looks interesting. I'd like to try that. Let's try that.
What was the most exotic?
Of that group, I suspect the 928s, or maybe the M635. There was a car that was memorable for a couple of reasons, which was I still liked Jaguars, and I mentioned I had a number of XJSs, 2 or 3 convertibles, and I saw. I need to get the terminology right here. It's an XJ-RS, and it was the.
Supercharger?
No, it was an XJ. It was the Walkinshaw modified XJ with the tortoise suspension, but standard mechanically. Anyway, I had a couple of those, and again, thinking back, these were cars that were on Auto Trader for £3,000 or something like that,
There comes a point where a car bounces.
Yeah, and
you were finding that.
I mean, I clearly wasn't good at it because I missed the bounce. I always got out because I wasn't buying them and collecting them and storing them. I was buying them and using them, and then they would go. And I missed the bounce. And
so were you at money back or a slight profit?
Yeah, a slight profit to move on to try something else, and that would be my goal, really. I mean, it wasn't a business, it was just, I want to try that, I like these. And interestingly enough, the XJ-RS, when Jaguar won Le Mans in '88, they made 100 of these this model, all in a sort of tungsten grey blue colour, and they all had a coach line down the side with a little XJR 9, whichever one them all, little sort of motif. That's what it's like, and they're all numbered, and I can't remember what number mine was. And anyway, apparently I was told that each of the England captains of respective sports, cricket, rugby, football, I don't know about others, were given one as a sort of product placement type exercise, and mine was David Gower. I'm embarrassed to say I don't know if David Gower was ever England captain, but I think he was. And anyway, it was his car, and that car I sold after 6 months or so, and it went to Australia.
Amazing.
I went to Australia, and when it got there, because it takes quite a long time to ship things to Australia.
It does, yes.
It's not a matter of days. It's some. Anyway, when it got there, I got an email from the chap who bought it sight unseen. I think he had it inspected. I can't remember now. And he said, yeah, it's nice. It's nice. He said, but the headlining's dropped. The headlining's all come away and dropped. I said, well, it was absolutely perfect when it left. And anyway, it transpired that a lot of cars, when they're shipped in that heat in a shipping container, glue, it is accelerated. It almost happens, Anyway, I said, well, there's nothing we can do about it now. I'm sorry, but it was fine when it left here. Anyway, it's interesting. That's another car that's ended up in Australia, and I carried on that exercise until I think really perhaps there's a couple of things happened, Nick, really. Perhaps I felt I'd exhausted that type of car that I was interested in. And also, when one was selling the cars, it was irritating that they were all of a sudden with these armchair experts. And instead of doing what you or I would have done, which is go look at a car, it was endless questions and emails and just a barrage of stuff that, you know.
It was a fruitless exercise.
To me it was, you know, this is just...
You were wanting to get in your car and come
Get in your car and come and have a look, just like it should be, really. But anyway, so I think that was perhaps a little bit disinterested in that. The car that in terms of missing the bounce, the cars that I was an early adopter of,
that you missed the bounce of.
that I absolutely spectacularly missed the bounce.
My son's very interested in cars. Are we confident that there's a new guard who are going to tread in our footsteps?
I think so. I think that probably not as many, but you can't take it out of somebody.
But will they? What I think is the question is, cars that are from the 20s, the men that know how to service them are dying. Cars from the 50s, 40s and 50s are getting older. And the young people that are new enthusiasts coming through will be wanting to buy a car that their dad had, which is a 1990.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's what's triggered the fast forward value explosion, isn't it? Those people are desperate. We wanted a Cosworth, Sierra Cosworth.
Yeah, they're 45 now.
Yeah, and
the Foreman.
And the car you mentioned earlier, an XR4, that would have plummeted in value to be almost worthless, would now be highly prized.
Yeah.
Highly prized, as with an XR3 or an RS Turbo, and then that sort of moves on, doesn't it, to the later generations, as you say. Yeah.
And in the round, I have one big question, and I hope it doesn't happen for a long time. When you're called to the great garage in the sky, what single car would you drive for eternity, and why?
Ooh. Well, I think I might, despite the fact I gave you my what I consider to be my dream.
That's different. That's a money no object. This you've got to run to the shops with. You've got to.
Oh, I see. Oh, it's going to have a broader.
It's you get one bite at the cherry.
It's the one. Okay.
But it has to fulfil all functions of family life.
Of everything. Okay. Well, that's it. That's interesting. I'm glad you qualified that because, and so I haven't got to worry about environmental angst.
No.
Okay. Well, we keep talking about bounce, and I mentioned Range Rovers, and I bought 3 or 4 years ago one of the first of the Range Rover, I think there was L322 series,
right,
which I still have, and I'm amazed at how that car can do everything. It's taken us on holiday to the Outer Hebrides. It's been, you're never short of space. It's a little bit big for town work, but I don't have any environmental angst about that because it's 22 years old. So I'm keeping an old thing going rather than using a newly produced thing. So I think I might put that in terms of a car that just sort of covers all bases.
Does it give you the emotional hit when you walk up to it?
Yeah, it does. It does give me an emotional hit. I mean, I should have mentioned that it sits with my other 2 cars. I have a Jaguar XJ, the X350 aluminium body car, and I have a Mercedes CL 500. Similar era, both cars from mid-2000s, and neither of those cars would be the do-everything thing.
Yeah.
We're just talking about one. The Range Rover can do everything. It's a little bit of a cliche, that expression, but until you sort of live with one, you think, this can...
I've driven Range Rovers, never owned one.
Yeah, they
Well, Unless you count the Evoque, but
Yeah.
it's not really a big Range Rover.
I'm sort of almost surprised myself by saying that. But if you're qualifying it by saying it needs to do everything, and we are talking about all mundane things about going to the tip.
Yeah, eternity is a long time.
Eternity is a long time. I might still have to go to the tip. I might still want to go out with friends in some luxury, and I might still want to go on holiday and have a boot full of stuff. I might still want to have dogs in the car. So we
can finish on a very high point.
Yeah, I'm surprised myself, because that's just sort of come to me that would be my choice. Really. Put it this way: if it was as simple as if I had to keep one for eternity from what I've got at the moment, that would be the only one that would be able to do everything.
Right. Well, that was amazing, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. It was a long time before we put that Range Rover in the garage. And to hear more real journeys with our four-fendered friends, like and subscribe, Clean Nuts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. I enjoyed it. Lovely. Thank you.
We're done. That was epic, wasn't it? Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, it was good fun. Whatever.